talk about upgrading specific stats in this game and which ones are even worth looking at or even upgrading it at all, especially if you're free to play, to even those mid-tier spenders, because you really want to focus your platinum in certain areas and make sure you're getting the most value out of your resources. Let's get into it. So today I want to talk about the secondary attributes as well as the additional attributes, because I feel like a lot of people don't really go over which ones you should really be looking for in the additional attributes, as well as damage and life here. The overall attributes on your gear really don't matter. I mean, you can see here it increases by such a small amount, and you really are looking for pure combat rating, which is just the highest attributes. So we're talking about like the gems and the stats themselves. So starting off with these 4 stats right here: armor, armor pen, potency, and resistance. They are all the same way. And what do I mean by that? They are all difference of stats, which means if you have higher than your opponent or if you have lower than your opponent by a small margin, you're going to get a lot of value or have a lot of detriment to that. But if you go way above your opponent, then it does not matter at all. And so basically, when you're a low spender or free to play, if you want to compete in PvE content, you can see here, I am simply in normal mode. And if I just check my armor pen right here, 47, it is 55 lower than your expected level. And so we're actually going to take a little bit of extra detriment in the game mode, despite it simply being PvE. Now, if we're talking about PvP, there's a whole different scenario, because it's compared against your opponents. And if your opponents spend a lot, then it won't matter a whole lot if they have so much more than you. In my case, on my main account, I might be running about 300 armor pen and someone will be running 1,000. So if I increase my armor pen by 400, it still won't matter. And just to give you an idea here, I'm gonna go ahead and pull up a spreadsheet that I built here. And this shows the charted value for armor pen and the increased crit damage, as well as the increased armor versus the increased block chance here. And then I created a predictive function to kind of tell us the additional crit damage. Now, it's not perfect, but I did my best. It's a little bit of a complicated function here. And it looks like you can see here, you get a lot of value in the additional armor pen, and then the crit damage here on this side. You're going to get a lot of extra crit damage beginning of the line, and then it starts to taper out. And then eventually, from about 150 armor pen on, my predictive function kind of doesn't do an amazing job, but the block percentage value over here does a better job here, kind of describing what the graph is going to do. The more you get, the less value you get. And so if we just hop back over to Diablo, we want to focus on usually about one of these stats. Now, armor here, it really just decreases enemy critical hit damage, as well as the additional damage reduction you're getting from blocking. And so for armor here, highly do not recommend anyone focus on this stat unless you are a crusader. If you are in PvP content and you really enjoy PvP content, then you may want to get this up a little bit if you're fighting a lot of crusaders or people who have high crit chance. But crit chance is very low in this game, so really I would recommend this only for satyrs because you block often with satyrs. Armor pen is the next one, and this is the one I'd recommend for the most amount of people. And the reason for this is, despite crit chance being low, of these 4 stats, you're going to get the most consistent value. Now, keep in mind that our crit chance here is literally 5%. And so even let's just say your crit damage was increased by 50%, and this armor pen is going to increase our critical hit damage from that 2 times, which we could see if we click on critical hit chance. It will increase it. Let's say we have that 50%, it'll be 250%. So we're basically getting a 25% damage increase if we crit. But again, that 25% damage increase only happens 5% of the time. So oftentimes the resources you could invest into armor pen are better spent in damage. And I'll go over that in just a bit. Then we have potency resistance. These ones are 99% of the time outside of PvP are completely worthless. I guess potency, I shouldn't say completely worthless, because potency can increase the duration of some of your effects. That's not necessarily just CC moves. And so if you have a lot of effects like burning or poison or things like that, you could extend it. But oftentimes it's just going to not give you much value for the potency and resistance that you put into it. And overall, just reducing the duration of effects from monsters. It doesn't really help you all that much because you don't oftentimes care about not dying because you're so strong already. And if you're below the combat rating, you're not going to have the resistance anyway. So that's a completely moot point. But when we're talking about potency and resistance here, I highly recommend ignoring these unless you're a PvPer. And in that case, this can be very, very interesting because you can increase the CC duration as well as decrease the enemy's CC duration if you're happening to get close to their number. Again, if you're fighting a massive whale, this doesn't matter at all. So I highly recommend you don't even upgrade these potency resistance stats. And I'll swap over my main a little bit just to show you my makeout of these stats. But I would definitely focus on armor pen for anyone. And then going to talk about the linear stats here are damage and life, which are your base stats. These are incredibly important, and the reason for this is all of your damage gets multiplied by that crit chance, crit damage, and amplifies it off your skills, and you're not getting any diminishing returns in a sense. Granted, the more you get, the less it kind of amplifies your damage. Like, let's say I have 2,000 damage and I get 200 damage, that's 10%. But let's say I have 4,000 damage and I get 200 damage, that's, 5%. So it's technically less, but the skill damage that increases stays the same, which is why you want more damage and more life, because life obviously will counteract the opponent damage as well as amplifying your already increased stats. Now, when talking about the additional attributes here, after we go ahead and go through a few of these, there's a few that stand out. But just to recap here for the secondary attributes, I highly recommend you focus on armor pen. And I really recommend you just purely dump your points into damage and life. And when I'm talking about points here, I'm talking about these normal gems. Is when you have these normal gems, use all your bound versions. There's no reason not to. But your unbound versions, I highly recommend you sell the ones that are not particularly great, especially if you're free to play or low spender, specifically resistance, potency, and armor here. And then focus maybe on armor pen. But even in that case, you might just want to focus on your legendary gems, because they increase your damage and life as well, which are some of the most important stats in the entire game. So talking about additional attributes here, accuracy and evasion rating. This is a little bit of hard to explain or hard to show in the game. Basically, there's a chance that someone will dodge your hit, and the evasion rating is that case. And so accuracy rating basically directly affects the fact that someone might dodge. This stat's very, very minute and not really particularly important oftentimes, so I wouldn't worry about that one. Critical hit chance, critical hit damage, and critical resistance. Resistance obviously reduces the chance for enemies to attack you with a critical hit. Chance increases your chance of critical hitting, and damage increases your critical hit damage done beyond twice, which is 2 times. That's the standard crit damage. Keep in mind that critical hit chance is actually a very, very good skill. Problem is, it's hard to get critical hit chance. Getting double damage is very, very nice, but the chance is so low that this is a very inconsistent mechanic, and so I highly recommend that you don't focus on critical hit chance, but it is really nice to find. Now we're getting to one that I think is consistently the best, in my opinion, the best stat in the entire game when we're talking about additional attributes, and that is attack speed. And the reason for this one, and a lot of people don't know this, is if you have increased attack speed, you actually speed up your animations. And I'm gonna go ahead and just run around the open world and see if I can find a movement or attack speed globe to show you this. Quickening globe here, I'm just gonna go ahead and showcase what the daring swing looks like without the quickening globe. You can see here, it just decent speed, but once we pick up the quickening globe, way quicker. And this is a huge deal for a lot of classes that are melee specifically, but also keep in mind that this is going to boost your channeling damage from wizard. This is going to boost your animations from Crusader dashes, from Barbarian dashes, from Barbarian whirlwinds. It's going to increase your overall channeling from Demon Hunters if you choose to use so. It's just going to overall increase your damage by insane amounts by increasing your animation speed. So attack speed is one of the most important, in my opinion, the most important stat in the game. It's also obviously going to increase the speed of your primary attacks. And it does say skills, but a lot of people don't know that, so I wanted to showcase it for you here. And then we have cooldown reduction. Again, another very, very important one. The only thing with this is cooldown reduction has a soft cap, it looks like. And some other people have tested this on their Demon Hunter specifically. When you have Heart of Vengeance plus the Awakening, it looks like Heart of Vengeance can only go down to a I believe 14-second cooldown from 20 seconds, which is 30%. So there's a soft cooldown reduction cap of 30%, so keep that in mind. Movement speed, these three are the most important ones in my opinion, and movement speed is going to be a huge one to just go get around the map quickly in PvP, PvE, whatever you're doing. Movement speed is massive. Block chance is just the chance that you'll happen to block, which will decrease the damage, and that damage decrease will be based on your armor. And then we have life drain, which is nice, but oftentimes you don't care about regaining life. If you're hitting in PvE, you're just going to be stronger than your opponent and not die, or you're just going to be so much weaker that you're going to get one shot. So life drain oftentimes doesn't matter. Cheat death is actually a huge thing for PvP. The fact that this might proc and you just might randomly live at 1 HP, it can be a massive bonus. But oftentimes, obviously, it is very RNG based. And then after this, the only other stat that really matters, because these two are for the Cycle of Strife events, so they're not really for the larger game, but they are quite good. Magic Find is the last stat here, besides Resonance, which Resonance, just as we went over previously, increases your base stats of all your gear, but this is more of a pay-to-win mechanic. And so is Magic Find, to be fair. Both of these are, but Magic Find will obviously increase your drop rate and is really important. But when we're talking about actual stats on your character that you can probably go for with the additional attributes in here, that we will unlock, and the magic attributes like the cheat death chance you can see here, or attack speed, those are the ones you're going to want to look for. So overall, what I would look for from your additional attributes, from your secondary attributes, and from your overall attributes like damage and life is damage and life are a #1 priority, especially damage. You're going to want to speed up everything that you possibly can. After that, attack speed, crit chance, and crit damage are going to be the ones you're going to want to go for. Specifically attack speed, crit chance, cooldown reduction if you can get it, and movement speed if you can get it, but these two are a little bit more rare. After that, crit damage and armor pen, which both kind of do the exact same thing. The only thing with armor pen is that if you're playing in PvP, ignore this. If you're a low spender or free to play, you're not going to be able to get it high enough. And then after that, kind of fill in with whatever stat you could possibly get, because those are the stats that are going to be the most effective overall. So hopefully that gives you an idea on what stats to look for and which ones have more of a diminishing return than other ones, so you don't have to waste all your resources like your normal gems, like your platinum, or perhaps just your reforged stones, or valuing one stat that changes the score over another one. So hopefully you enjoyed, and I will see you for the next video.